Yeah, good. Yeah. So welcome everybody to the Design Advisory Panel meeting for Thursday, August 12th, 2021. First item of business is to call the meeting to order and to remind everybody that this meeting is being live streamed and video recorded for the public. I don't believe that there's any late items, but the Friday too.
Okay.
And
get rid of the soap.
okay, Fred, can you mute your sound, please? Thank you.
I'm trying to.
Okay.
Oh. Okay, I think I'm mute now, okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you still.
Oh.
There it goes.
Okay, that's good. So I don't believe there's any introduction of late items, number 2. So item 3, the adoption of the agenda. And I believe the only thing would be that we need to amend is that there won't be the minutes from the previous meeting. Is that correct, Lori? Okay, so anybody else have any concerns with the agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on to item 5, the presentations. And the first one is for development permit application DP 1235 at 3401 Barrington Road, and that's going to be introduced by Lisa Bergman.
Hi everybody. This is a development permit application for phases 5, 6, and 7 of a townhouse strata development at 3401 Barrington Road. The applicant is proposing 26 3-bedroom townhouse units. The property is zoned R6, low-density residential, and falls within Development Permit Area 5 for steep slopes and Development Permit Area 9 for multifamily development. Both the General Development Permit Area Design Guidelines and the Steep Slope Development Permit Area Design Guidelines apply to the proposed development. Variances are proposed for building height for 3 of the building blocks, and a variance to the retaining wall and fence height is also proposed.
Good, thank you, Lisa. And so does the applicant have his presentation ready that he can share this, or she can share the screen?
Yes, I can share the screen. Okay, so is this showing up just the screen or everything?
Yeah, it's showing up.
Oh, okay. Okay, so what we have basically, as was explained by Lisa, was it's a townhouse development comprising of 26 units. All of them 3-bedroom plus den, and they all average at about 1,650 square feet. Effectively, on the site, the site plan basically is fairly straightforward. The main road that comes in, I believe it's called Fireweed Way, enters at the west side of the property and traverses across and bisects our subject properties. This is all one property, but because of the strata and the phasing of the development and subdivision, effectively there's 3 phases, or 3 lots as they would call it, but they're all being grouped together for this DP. So the main access road bisects the entire property into a north and south half, because it's following the contours. It's a very steep property here, and the south part of the property has quite a bit of an embankment. So almost half, 12 of the 26 units are on what we call the downhill side, and they are blocks 2, 4, and 6. And the other 14 units we call the uphill units, and they're on the south side of the access road, block 1, 3, 5, and 7. So on the uphill side, The blocks are either a 3-plex or a 4-plex. They're all 3-story. However, the ground floor, or the lowest floor as we would call it, is basically embedded into the bank. So other than the garage door at the front and the entry in from the road, the rest of it is pretty much below grade for obvious reasons because of the steepness of the slope. Directly across the access road, block 2, 4, and 6, the downhill units, are effectively 2-story buildings. They're all 4-plexes. They're 2-story units each. The ground floor, where you drive in, has the garage, and then the main living area, and the main master bedroom is at the ground floor, which we felt was very important in consideration of potential seniors occupying these townhomes as well. I'll go through the floor plans in a moment. I'm just going to explain the parking. Generally, there's 52 parking stalls calculated per the zoning bylaw that are required for this development of 26 units. We are providing 71 parking stalls on the site, and also 4 visitors and 1 dedicated accessible parking stall in addition. So, and all the units have a driveway which will fit a car, which we felt was very important for, as in most developments, even though you meet the visitor parking minimum requirements, it's never enough parking, we find, for visitors or for friends or families to visit you. So having that driveway that's deep enough to actually park the vehicle, we thought was very important and very, very useful. So parking is met with that. I'll go through the uphill units, or I'm just going to jump across first to the 3D images. Are we getting this?
You're still in your site plan.
Oh, okay, one moment, let me just, hang on, I'm gonna, wait, let me share. Okay, so here we have our 3D model, just to help explain a little bit more of the site and the development as we zoom out here. So as you can see, there's this is an aerial view. It's a bit slow, the computer here. And you can see the blocks along, the 3 blocks here are the downhill units effectively, and then the 4 building blocks on this side of the driveway aisle are the uphill units. We did propose, because of the site topography, there is proposed a retaining wall. You can see here along the bottom here below the downhill unit for a retaining wall that's been designed by the geotech engineer to basically retain that in order to provide somewhat of a level and opportunity for these downhill units to have access by stairs or steps down out to a somewhat of a backyard situation. Conversely, on the uphill side, there would be some excavation required along the mountain to fit these in, but the units do, on their middle main floor, access out to a rear access patio. The design also for the uphill units wanted to incorporate decks on the front of the units because there's a tremendous view from all of these units looking out to the south. Well, you can't see the model here, but we wanted to take advantage of that view and address the street to give this access road also some interaction with the users of the property, and that they can provide some supervision on there as well as some interaction. The floor plans basically are fairly straightforward. All of these units, we've incorporated the main master bedroom on the ground floor in the downhill unit and on the middle, or as we call the main or the middle floor of the uphill unit. In the downhill unit, the lower floor, which is backed into the slope, accommodates 2 bedrooms and a rec room and a laundry, and then a walkout to the patio deck to their backyard. The uphill unit, the main bedroom is on the middle floor, and in the upstairs there's 2 good-sized bedrooms, a den, as well as a laundry room at the upper floor. So we feel these are very, not luxury, but very functional units. They can be very well family-oriented to support a family of different age kids of all ages, and provide sufficient enough spaces to make it feel comfortable. The next thing is I'll just touch on some of the fenestration, the articulation of it. The idea on this particular project was to develop a fairly consistent design finish with the buildings, both in massing and in exterior finishing. There is some differentiation between each unit with the use of similar materials but different colors and tones, and in some cases different materials, so that each particular unit is individual. We felt that we wanted to make the whole project, that's all of the 26 units, feel like they're all part of what we felt was to be proud of this development, as opposed to being each individual unit on their own, mixed among 26 units. We really wanted to have that continuity of the design and the finishes carried through all the buildings, because we felt everyone that is going to live here, wants to be part of this identifiable overall development. Which is not, too uncommon in many townhouse developments, but we felt very strong, and that's why we didn't, change the design from building to building significantly and varied them for that reason. The other elements regarding landscape, we'll let Fred Brooks, our landscape designer, present those and explain those. And just wanted to touch on a couple other things that were commented from them. We're using high quality exterior finishing here, low maintenance types of finishing. We've introduced a lot of natural wood, natural fir in the timbers and the roof brackets and stuff to warm that up and to carry that space through. And every entry is identifiable with its address number and plenty of lighting for well at night. I guess I'll stop there, and I'll wait for other comments to come in. Is that enough?
Okay, Fred, if you're ready.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Good, thank you. I hope and trust that every panel member has had an opportunity to see the actual landscape plan drawings in detail, and perhaps have had an opportunity to visit the site. Obviously nothing too dramatic. Well, it's a dramatic site to visit, but there's nothing on the ground that can really give any indication of how the landscape development will evolve, other than the drawings. And the criteria that I have is that we wanted to maximize the amount of lawn space in front of the units, because the driveways and the roadway are a dominant part of the ground plane there, and that by having maximum planting areas, and from my experience of actually working on a prior part of this site, was that with the very incredible heat that we're having, and that's a very exposed, windy site. It's a very desiccating environment for landscape plants. Plus, there's a deer problem up there as well, but that's beside the point. But my intention here would be that we want to have a maximum canopy of large growing shade trees to give the scale to the buildings, because they are in some elements up to 3 stories, but we want to help to mitigate that with large scale deciduous shade trees, which will provide a cooling effect as they develop over the roadways and the parking and the lawn areas. The other opportunity to provide the residents, the homeowners there, is the patio spaces that are at the rear of the units and the large lawn areas which feed across the back of it as kind of a continuity of a green space, so that there's a feeling of privacy and isolation for each of the patios, but at the same time there's also a feeling of a generous open space to the rear of the home. And on the high side of this, there is a rock base that we'll be planting out with large tall-growing deciduous conifer trees, and then also Boston ivy and other vine type of plants that will anchor onto the rock bases and provide a softening and a coloring effect there for that. On the downside of that, there is the retaining wall that Gus has referred to, and because of the height of the wall, there is a wood lattice detail fence across that, which is on the drawings supplied. And there's also a sample of the element of that detail on the site if one had ever visited the phase 4. So that encapsulates the elements of the landscape. And I don't know if I need to address the points of the staff comments, or if those have been circulated. Perhaps Lisa or Kevin, you could let me know if the letter I sent on Monday or Tuesday has been circulated now, rather than saving me reading 5 minutes of text to answer your staff comments on the landscape.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I would say if the panel members want to bring it up, some of those staff comments, you can answer them individually. But I would probably advise not to get too winded in your answers to them, because you obviously don't have all night. But I would say that I would say it's probably okay to send a letter to staff, but to address them or talk to them. But I normally would prefer that you do address them at the meeting and not send letters to staff or the panel members in the future.
Okay.
Just because it's so much easier in the past, almost with every presentation, whether it's the architect, landscape architect, all of them, when they see the staff comments, they have time to, digest them, and sometimes even time to change what's being done prior to the meeting. So that's a way in the future, I think that's probably the best way to address it. And if you do want to address any before I open it up to the panel members, I would say you can, but I don't want a long-winded presentation with it. So.
Kevin, I certainly agree with you, and I prefer not to as well.
Yeah.
I was just trying to be helpful to address the staff comments. If there was a way to not have to do this during the meeting, then that's fine too. But I'm certainly prepared with the same comments to address if someone brings up during the course of your discussions. Now, please go ahead. Okay,
we'll do that then. I'll open up to the panel now. So first I would ask the panel members if they have any questions for staff. Seeing none, then I would open it up to the panel members for questions to the applicants. And I will start with Charles.
Sorry, that took too long. Thanks, Kevin. And thank you for your presentation. Fred, I will ask you one question. One of the questions that staff asked was, is there a block retaining wall at the end of the road? Do you know if that is a block retaining wall?
Yes, I can answer that. where is that? Oh, yes, here it is. The zone at the end of the Strata Road is proposed to be adjacent down-sloping grades at the property line with the no-post barrier at the property line for vehicle safety. So we're addressing that by making sure that the road ending is kind of a runaway lane, and that there is a hammerhead reversing bay there for casual use by by visitors that may come in and find they're in a dead-end space.
Okay, and so the no-post barrier, is that also, it's fairly well planted around it as well, right?
Oh yeah, we don't want to make it an obvious, big thing painted yellow like you see, on the highway or somewhere. We want it to be as discreet as possible, but to certainly do the job if in the event that there is a vehicle incident that may, require the vehicle to be apprehended before it goes off the property.
Okay, thank you. So yes, there were some staff comments as well about the form and character of the buildings. I have to say I like the continuity or the sameness that you've used between the units rather than differentiating them all higgledy-piggledy. So I think that's worked for you. You do have a couple of different strategies on the end walls of the different blocks. And that I think was highlighted in the staff comments that some additional treatments or something could be looked at. And I think, in my opinion, it's not that you need additional treatments, it's that maybe a little more consistency between the way you're treating the end blocks. There's a couple that you've already buried the material and the color around the base, or around the building at the end. And then there's a couple where it's all the same material and the same color. I would encourage you to think about, picking your favorite strategy that way and sort of applying it consistently. But overall, I think the mix of color and the form and character is working quite well. I'm okay with the entrances. They are differentiated as they are at the moment. So yeah, I think quite well. It ties together quite well, and I do like the variation between block types, upper and lower slope. Yeah, I think you've done a good job of integrating it into a challenging. These are always challenging sites with these sloping landscapes. So those are my comments, and I'll hear what my fellow panel members have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. Next up, Tony. Please.
Thank you. Enjoyed your presentation. I would like to see a little more in the section kind of thing, because they're pretty tiny on the drawings that I saw earlier, but that's okay. I understand it, having worked on similar sites, and I commend you on how well you've integrated the units with the slopes and the two basic different kinds of units. They work very well. The form and character, along with Charles' comment, I like the consistency and the small touches of variety for individual entrances and so forth, and the fact that they're quite conducive to family living, I think, is also excellent. I guess the only comment I would have, I'm not sure how well it showed on the drawing, so perhaps I'm missing something here. The driveway is such a dominant factor in that site. Have you given any thought to, or could you, to some kind of variety on the driveway, either materials or texture or color or something like that, whether it's the individual driveways to each unit, or periodically along the main driveway, just to break it up a little bit? That'd be my only sort of criticism of it. Otherwise, I think it's an excellent, well-designed project. I commend you. Thank you.
Fred, did you want to comment on the driveway comment?
Other than the fact that the traditional thing is to be using exposed egg on that, and that there may be an opportunity to use, say, colored exposed egg in an intermittent pattern with that, and also in the scoring of the joints that can be quite pronounced and give a relief to to the continuation of each driveway to driveway.
Yeah, but there is, the individual units do not have sidewalks, correct? You're walking up the driveways, correct?
Correct, and my reply to that was that I certainly want to consult with the architects that we could add up to 18 inches or so to the width of the driveway, but adding a separate sidewalk to go to the front door will greatly reduce the amount of lawn area and green space in front of the home. And I'm trying as a landscape architect to defend my green space, and to, at the same time, we want to make it comfortable and safe for someone to get from their car to the front door, or from if they're a pedestrian, to be able to get good access there without impinging too much on adding more concrete and reducing the grass area.
Yeah, but by varying the materials like Tony suggested, one of the methods could be to vary the material to sort of create an edge that could be viewed almost like a sidewalk, right? So I think as part of his recommendation, that might be something, that a method that you might be able to add variety to the driveway materials, right?
Yeah, we can get more definition to that simply through materials, colors, textures, and it'll help identify it as this is my sidewalk to my home front door.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Tony?
No, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Next up, Marie, please.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. Good job on dealing with the slope and trying to add some larger homes for families in the area. That's great. In terms of form and character, I like your mix of materials and how you worked with both sort of texture and line to give some variation. Personally, I'd like to see a little bit more color. I find that the tans and earth colors rather dull, but maybe that's just my own personal sense of taste. And I can understand your point of trying to keep it consistent, but I'm along with the staff, I'd like to see a little bit more, I think there could be some hits of color to just kind of spark that up a little bit, and maybe distinguish some of these bits, one from the other, a little bit more clearly. And in terms of the form of character as well, I'm not too clear on what the brackets, the roof brackets are intended for. I look at them and they kind of stick out as kind of an anomaly on the front. So again, just sort of some aesthetic considerations. I'm not sure if it's architecturally needed to hold up your roof there, or it's just efficient.
Yeah. I mean, they are. Certainly they're decorative, but not structural. The roof, that little monopitch angled roof, does have the eave isn't a consistent. The soffit isn't a consistent overhang. It increases from a shallow end to a deeper soffit. But we're trying to soften up that larger mass as the roof gets to the high end there. It creates a larger mass wall at that corner. So we introduced that roof bracket so that we could bring that, basically deal with that massing there, and then also then carry it across and, achieve the same use of it on the downhill units, so that, again, where the mass gets high because of that sloping roof, that it's at least, there's some definition there.
Yeah, I just find with your mix of textures and lines in there that maybe you don't even need that. I think that sort of varies it and breaks it up, but I don't know how the roof pitch works, but I don't know that you really need the bracket in there. It just sort of looks a bit gratuitous to me.
Yeah. Well, I think certainly the developer would agree with you if we can eliminate them. I'm sure.
Okay, this is what you might want to consider. And in terms of the landscape, I appreciate how Fred's trying to give a good balance of personal space, lawn area, and then the natural, using natural plantings, and also including a play area and some good amenity space as well. Nice work there. So, thanks.
Thanks, Marie. Kate, please.
Thank you for your presentation. I don't have much to say about the buildings. I kind of agree with what's been said. I will reiterate what Tony said about the paving, looking at opportunities to do something different, and more specifically focusing on that entry to to each unit, so whether it's just differentiating the paving on the driveway or having paths to the entry. I think that would be great and benefit each space. My only other thought is, I noticed there was a comment about the finishing of some of the site furnishings by the staff, and I'm assuming, so Fred, could you just review what the intent is for that fence on top of the retaining wall, how it's going to be finished, and then you have a couple of structures, correct, in that sort of play area amenity space?
Are you ready for me to answer now?
Yes, please.
Yes, of course. The texture, the fence, along the north retaining wall, there's an extreme drop-off there due to the topography of the site, and that it's determined that we need to have a safety barrier there, and one that will be as discreet as possible, which will provide both safety and a buffer to the overlook of the retaining wall, which is there, which is quite pronounced. There is a sample of that there, and there is also an illustration of a horizontal board, flat board, that is part of that railing safety. And there's the option of either having the tan colors, which the steep slope design guidelines wish to see it as a tan color, or it could also be a type of a gray pattern which can match some of the features on the building itself. So we'd like to borrow from the architecture to blend the safety retaining retaining wall safety fence in a harmonious way.
Kate, did you see the drawing on the very last sheet?
Yes, I did. I'm just not clear on how it's going to be finished. So,
okay.
Because that's what was referenced by the staff. So it's that safety decor fence along the top of the retaining wall is either board. Is that correct?
Yes.
And whether or not you're painting it, I feel like I read somewhere something was being painted white or not, and I think I would encourage you to work with what's recommended in the steep slope, so working with more of the natural, whether you are just staining the wood to a net.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Okay, sorry to interrupt, absolutely. I prefer to go with the brown tones on that wood fence, because that will also match the brown tones which are existing on the first portion of that same retaining wall area. So, oh, I see. Well, thank you guys. Okay. Yeah, that's the detail which is there, and which is 90% similar to what was actually constructed on site. The one on site has a little larger gap between the boards, so there's a little more transparency to it, but at the same time it provides the feeling of a screen and a buffer and a safety edge there. Now, Kate, may I answer or respond to your comment about the recreation area there? Mm-hmm. Okay. On my detail, which is part of the plan view, I had proposed that we do have a very elegant plastic kind of a lattice detail, and this brings up Marie's point too quite well. And I want to try and show you what I'm intending there. Now, if you look on the plan, there's a circular form there, which also is a part of the, let me reach for it here, part of the mixed picnic table paving area and a soft play area, but it forms a crescent around the back of that before the grade goes down towards the retaining wall. Now, I want to try and show you what I was intending, and then the staff comment was that they wanted to see this in brown or beige colors, but is this readable by anyone on their screen? Is this readable on your screen?
Yes.
I hope that might help explain my intention there to bring in a very delicate and classical form there using the white, which is really more creating a nice contrast, not a strong contrast, but a garden element into the forum that we have there, which is for pedestrians and, to use and small children's play area there. And it also creates a nice little enclave to sit and chat with people on the benches there. So this idea of white, which is not allowed under the steep slope bylaw thing, I was just trying to counter that with something just to bring a little taste of initiative to incorporate some garden refinements into the site and the project.
I guess I would say I might as well just kind of be consistent across your scheme, across the landscape plan. And if the steep slope suggests other colors, I think I would encourage you to follow the guidelines.
Well, we can paint it brown if you like, sure.
Yeah, anyway, just, okay. Also, I wanted to know, there was a comment about the retaining wall and the height of the retaining wall and the possibility of stepping it down so that you don't need to ask for a variance. Is that still the case?
I think, Kate, I'd like to hand that over to the architects or the civil engineer, because it's a very tight site, and that by stepping that retaining wall, either the backyards are going to be reduced of the downslope units, or there's going to have to be some other squishing and squeezing somewhere else to be able to step that wall.
Exactly what we were thinking was the moment we step the retaining wall, well, first of all, the retaining wall is designed by the civil engineer to locate it, the size of it, to minimize, or, to mitigate, having that drop in the elevation, but also to minimize the impact to the topography as much as possible. Stepping it, will it also reduce the backyard availability of all 12 of those downhill units significantly, and then stepping it also has an impact on the future phase 8, 9 lots that are just below this development that are still yet to come, and those will be challenging in itself because of their shape of their sites, etc. So henceforth, that's why we ultimately went with the one retaining wall as opposed to stepping it. And then the other issue of stepping it was just, what happens on that step? How is it maintained? You can't access it really to maintain any kind of landscaping on there as well, right? So it becomes a bit of a dead zone, potentially.
Okay, I can appreciate that. This is where I have to agree with Tony. It would have been helpful for us to have seen some kind of section so I could have better understood the relationship of this development to the next development. But maybe, Fred, you can you could plan at the top of that wall to soften it for what happens below. If that's what I'm understanding correctly, that there will be development below, maybe you can have some planting on that edge, because it looks like you just have pockets of planting on that edge, not actual continuous. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. My intention there is that, from my experience with the previous site, phase 4, that we do need a dedicated planting zone immediately adjacent to the retaining wall that will train plant material, deciduous and broadleaf evergreen, over that wall to do that softening effect. So it is absolutely essential now that, given our experience there, both by the owner and the architect, that we need to step up and address that. So the planting will be there to do that. And I do welcome your point, and I certainly respect that we do need to have a very significant planting strip, and irrigated planting strip along the top of that wall, which lets the plants give free roam to get over that down the edge, the face of it.
I think that's a very simple way to help buffer that wall, that feeling of the wall. And then finally, my last comment is just I feel like you have room to add more trees, and as I like to comment every time, if you can find a way to add more trees, I think the landscape would benefit from that. as always.
I take that to heart. That is a great comment, and thank you for making it, and I want to support you and back you up on that with more particularly large growing shade deciduous trees for cooling effect.
Yes, and it looks like you have the space that, so you could. So that
We do.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks, Kate. I would just jump in and I would pretty much echo everything that was said so far, with the exception of with respect to the form and character. If the roof structure with the angled roof is going to be left like that, I think the braces that are being put, I think they kind of fit in nicely and help to break it up. So I would disagree with my colleague Marie on that, but I'd be more than welcome to hear what everyone else has to say regarding that. I would agree. I also agree with Kate that some site sections to the site, especially pertaining to the retaining wall and the site directly below, because I think there's currently a project under construction directly to the north. And I would imagine they weren't expecting to be able to look up and see a 17-foot retaining wall there. That's probably going to be the large lock block wall. Is that what that's going to be?
Who was your comment to, Kevin?
It's either you or Gus.
I prefer Gus to respond to that because they designed that retaining wall,
Okay.
before I was directly involved on that.
Yeah. So
Well, I mean, yes, there will be a retaining wall exposed there. It's almost an inevitable situation, just due to the fact of the topographies. If there was any opportunity to cut and fill and move and try and eliminate that and still be buildable, we did, look at every avenue trying to accomplish that, but this seemed to be the best solution to be able to accommodate the development, the future development below, and it's as small as it can be, the retaining wall. Unfortunately, it is a high pace, no doubt, but there's really no way around it, but trying to build on this particular site given the topographies.
yeah, and it is a large concrete lock block. Is that what you're planning on using?
Yeah, that's the idea, yes.
Yeah, to give you an example, there's a rental project that's being completed right now on Uplands Drive between Turner Road and Oliver Road. And they had the similar problem that they had to deal with retaining walls along Uplands. And we got them to change it to a more terraced wall and use the smaller split face block retaining wall along it. And it's a very long wall, and by doing so you get a nice terrace ledge there. They've got cascading plants that are coming down. They got climbers, they got plants in there, they got trees in there, and it looks a lot nicer than the larger lock block wall. So I would definitely like to see you look at options to terrace that retaining wall, because I think it would just look so much nicer from looking up from below, from that area down below, instead of that large block wall.
Okay, yeah, we'll look at some options, certainly, and thank you for the advice.
Okay. You don't have any civil engineer here regarding stormwater management? I take it there's not going to be any bioswales or rainwater gardens or anything like that?
Nathan Trowbridge is our civil engineer. I don't believe he's logged in for this meeting, but we do have a scheduled meeting with the Nanaimo City staff in a few days' time to review that exact issues with the stormwater management.
I see Scott Lewis's name. Is he logged in, or is he part of the next project? Okay. There's obviously ways that you might be able to do something and work with Fred on something like that, but if the civil engineer isn't here, obviously I don't know what might or might not be feasible. So aside from that, most of my other concerns are really regarding the landscape concept. I think from what we're used to seeing in landscape presentations, I feel this plan is quite confusing, because all three plans that you have have north going in different directions, which was very confusing for me anyways. And almost had to take the pages apart and move them around to get them to line up consistently. But also that, aside from that, it seemed like very little items were labeled on the plan. You do have, I know on the last sheet, you do have your legend there, but it doesn't really identify where everything is going. And like the plant and tree locations. So that really kind of frustrated me because Fred, I've seen your work over the years, and for the most part you've done a stronger effort, and I would have liked to have seen like the site sections, plants and tree locations, and if Kate is happy with it, I would be happy to let everything go with with her comments. But was there a tree management plan done? I know you said that it should have shown that there are some trees on the north side being preserved. Looks like there was a little bit of a cluster on the west side. Is that correct?
No, the only trees that are there are along the property line of the rock face of the north property line.
The north property line?
Way above it.
And
There was a tree assessment done by Toss and Associates, Environmental Services. They were retained, and they did conduct a tree survey of two of the proposed areas on there, and they did log, trees that were there, and trees that were deemed to be cut, etc. So there was a tally for it, and subsequently a tree removal permit that was applied for. It was in our development package submission. I'm not sure if you got the copy of that.
No, it doesn't normally go into that.
okay, yeah. Lisa said it normally doesn't go into that package, but sometimes we get a drawing that has sort of the existing trees on it and what's going to be retained and what's not going to be retained. So, but aside from that, I would say I like the project. In my opinion, if I was, when I vote, I would prefer not to support the retaining wall height variance, but I would support the building height variance. But we'll see what everyone else says on that. So thank you for your presentation, and anybody else have any questions or comments? Kate?
Yeah, actually, just I'm trying to be open-minded about the plan, and I'm just realizing there are a few things that I think are hard to read. Is it that there are retaining walls throughout the whole site, or is that hedging?
No, I think maybe what you're looking at there, referring to, Kate, are some smaller, older size retaining walls where it's necessary to step some of it. They're drawn as this sort of continuous necklace of rocks that would be required there in the grade changes between the side yards of these units.
Okay, so that's helpful, because my next question was, what are they? So knowing that they're just sort of natural rock placed into retain. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, large natural rocks, and they do, because of the grade changes and the blocks, like for blocks 3 and 5, etc., there is a step height between the individual units within the block. So we need to accommodate that step from the terrace to terrace and the rear yards there.
And sorry, Kevin, actually in my questioning I remembered something else I had wanted to bring up.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, was just whether with the owners and if you talked about having greater site circulation, like I'm just looking where the visitor parking is in a few instances and wondering should there be accessible routes to the back lawn or not?
I don't think the homeowners would appreciate people just being able to wander into the back spaces of those where they have patio doors and personal furniture, etc. on their patios. I would sort of decline on allowing that to be intruded upon. I think we want to give them as much privacy and security as we can in the rear units of backyards of these.
Yeah. So where you have meadows seeded, could you imagine people walking on that?
No, that's strictly a makeup space between the lawn area, which is part of each patio's, usable space, and the high terrace or high rock space. So that we're bringing it down in steps from the lawn to the seeded meadow, which is just a natural element there seasonally. And then there are planting pockets, again, with the rock formations that we need to fill up with the rocks in order to create the planting spaces that buffer the wall, the high natural stone wall.
Well, what I'm thinking is that that amenity area that you have called sort of identified for all the residents and or children, that children may be, or anyone using that space may be coming from their backyard, and you might want to entertain having even just a subtle stepping stone path if the grades allow it through some of these areas, because I think they're going to be walked through, and maybe just to preemptively design for that, it might be worthwhile, especially to that amenity space.
But I think what will happen there, Kate, is by looking at the larger detail of that means every child has to walk past someone else, a number of other people's rear patios to get there, rather than coming out their own front door and just walking down the fire.
So they have to walk down the driveway.
Well, they walk under the front door down to the fireweed, which is the name of the roadway there, which is called fireweed, the Strata Road. But they would come out of their front door down to the Strata Road and walk down to the soft play area, and families, adults can meet there on the benches and have a chat, etc. But to invite them to go between units 204 and 401 means they have to sort of, I would call it trespass across rear yards. People had not balcony, but the patio doors and patio furniture, etc. And that may not be a welcome idea.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. But maybe then the differentiation of paving on Fireweed Way might become more important so that children there's more of a walk space, whether it's just, I don't know.
I mean, walking on the roadway, or walking on their front entry.
Possibly their roadway. I don't know if anyone else has any comment about that.
I think, Kate, that might be a big ask to, for them to change it from a regular standard asphalt roadway to something else. Also, consider this is built in stages or phases as well. That may help with your idea, but I don't know. I think the architect and the owner want to consult each other on that.
Just wanted to throw in some comments, not to interrupt you, Kate, but just regarding the retaining wall. I'm just going to share a screen here. So the retaining wall, as you can see, is all along this edge of the property, if you follow my mouse there. And then it ties into an already existing new built retaining wall here in phase 4. In most cases, for the most part of this wall, it's maybe only a couple of meters in height. Only when it gets to the far at the north end here, where as you can see, the contour lines and the ground gets very, very steep, and we're trying to build into that area, where that retaining wall does grow, upwards of 4 meters out of the ground. But for the most part, it's not that high. So I just want to make sure that the panel's aware of the situation with it. That although there is a variance asked for the height of the retaining wall, it's in fact not asking for a 2.5 meter variance on the entire retaining wall, just on those portions that get higher due to the topography. So just wanted to make that. Because it's almost impossible to lower the retaining wall because it basically requires then the building to be sunk lower which then requires the driveways also then to slope down into these units, which isn't ideal, because we still have to respect that the main fireweed strata road, we can't lower that one because then it affects how you get into the uphill unit. It's sort of a delicate balance and trying to find the balance between serving the uphill units and the downhill units. Just wanted to make that point that was clear.
Okay, Kate, you did not have a recommendation there, is that correct?
I guess not, no, I don't know.
Okay.
No.
Anybody else want to come in and jump on any of the things we discussed? Seeing none. So then we have the variances that we'll need to discuss at some point in time, but so far I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, possibly 6 recommendations. First one is to consider consistent material color strategies to the side elevations. That was Charles, I believe. Adding variety to the driveway materials. Add more depth of color to the buildings. Consider natural colors for the structures in the amenity space. Add more trees throughout the site. And look at options to terrace the retaining wall. Anything missing, Kate? Kate?
Just to, because it's not shown that it's to plant above the retaining wall, so that will get plants trailing over.
So that wasn't indicated in the landscape concept?
Not from what I can tell, I'm not sure.
So add planting to cascade down the retaining walls?
Yeah, there just seems to be pockets of planting where there's a tree.
Okay.
Oh, may I address that, Kevin and Kate?
Yeah.
On the drawings of detail L2 and L3, there is an indication of that planting strip there with the notation for that. So I do appreciate that it has been brought up and your support that we do need to do that, but it was not an omission of the drawings that it was not shown there at all.
Sorry, which sheet, Fred?
L2.
L2.
At the top of L2, cascade planting, train down face of retaining wall, Boston ivy, Virginia creeper, Cotonia aster, etc. So it's not just that one module, it's the entire strip face of the wall.
Okay. Does that satisfy you, Kate?
Okay.
So as long as it's on record that those cascading plants are continuous throughout the retaining walls. So that would be put into the notes of the minutes, correct? Or do you think that needs to be added?
Well, it's already on the drawing.
Yeah, well, it's only added in one spot, but it doesn't say throughout the wall, so.
It has notes, not a drawing.
Motion strongly.
Yeah, I think we can put it in the motion just so that it's totally clear and there's no misunderstanding later. Does any of the panel members want to, also Marie had the one of not adding the braces to the front of the third story wall faces. Did anybody want to comment on that?
Seems I'm the only one that is worried about it. Tony?
Does Tony and Charles, do you want to jump in on that?
I'd like to, I was kind of numbering the recommendations as you were reading them, Kevin, and I'm supportive of 1, 2, 5, and 8, but I've forgotten what some of them are at this point. Can we kind of go through them item by item?
Okay, sure. So the first one was consider consistent material and color strategies to the side elevations. That was Charles. Is everybody
Yeah, that was just treating the end units
Yes. Yeah.
a little more,
And Charles, you're fine with that wording? Okay. And everyone else is okay with that one? So call that one. Add variety to the driveway materials.
Yeah.
Everyone's good with that one?
Is it to the material or just to the appearance finish? And we talked about controlling maybe more distinctive and control of the control joints and whatnot so that it reads as almost like a walking area along the edge of the driveway.
Yeah.
Maybe with closer control joints than just big wide open ones.
Yeah. Okay, Tony, that was your recommendation, so please jump in.
Yeah, my comment would just add some variety and interest, so it's not just a sheet of, all the same stuff. So however they want to deal with it,
Yeah.
so but that I just wanted to note.
So Gus, we would leave that open to you. Okay. Marie's comment about adding more depth of color to the buildings. You want to comment on that? Tony, Charles, Kate, do you feel that you support that, or?
I don't have a problem with the way it's done. I'm quite content with
The way it is, right, the colors that they are? Okay, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at it, I just thought they were essentially following the steep slope guidelines for
Okay.
natural, color palette.
Okay, Kate?
Yeah, I didn't really have a problem with it either.
Okay, I don't have a problem either, so Marie, you don't mind if we remove that?
No, that's okay. No, that doesn't have to be a recommendation.
Okay, and then consider natural colors for the structures in the amenity space. That was Kate's comment. Marie, Charles, Tony, do you like that one?
I agree with it. I think it has to fit with the rest of the building. I think the white makes it look quite different.
Okay, everyone else the same? Okay.
I think it's, again, it's consistent with the guidelines.
Okay, and add more trees to the site?
Always possible.
Always? Okay. Look at options to terrace the retaining wall?
no.
Tony says no. Charles?
It's a tricky one because it's a geotech. It's a challenge. I totally understand it.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing is they do have, I'll call it a luxury, that they're not constrained by a property line. They're constrained by their paving lines, but there could be some potential to step the retaining wall, but geotechnically that might introduce other challenges. So I think in my looking at it, and because the high section is limited along the length of the wall, if it's planted as we've discussed, basically if it's planted the way that's been discussed, I think that will help mitigate the height variance.
Okay, and Marie and Kate?
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this sounds like an engineering question.
Okay.
Maybe the architect just has to come back with, make sure it's thoroughly researched on the engineering end.
Okay, and Kate, even though it doesn't matter,
I was going to say, I know the example you presented, Kevin, and I think in that instance, because it was like right fronting the road, whereas this is going to be the back of another property, is that correct?
yeah, there's a development currently under development there.
Yeah, and it's the back of the property?
Yeah, it's the back of their property as well, yeah. So they have an upsloping lot as well.
I am okay with how it is.
Okay, I'll remove that one. And then the last one was add plants to cascade down retaining walls.
There.
Everyone's okay with that? So I have 5 items then?
Kevin,
Yeah.
can we maybe just reword that one? Because the drawings call for the plant, because I saw it on the plan, I
Okay,
think maybe it's just ensure that the
Okay.
cascade planting is continuous along the wall face.
yeah, okay. Sure. Okay, so the fifth one is ensure cascading plants run the full length of the retaining walls. Okay. So the first one was consider consistent material color strategies to the side elevations. The second one, add variety to the driveway materials. Third one was consider natural colors for the structures in the amenity space. Fourth is add more trees throughout the site. And 5, ensure the cascading plants run the full length of retaining walls. Tony? Yeah.
I think there was also one about the brackets and...
The braces? Oh yeah, do you guys?
I don't have a problem with those brackets.
Okay, I don't have a problem. Yeah, so we remove that one as well, so just those 5, right? Now with respect to the variances, there's a height variance and retaining wall variance. Do you guys support one or both of those?
I'm okay with both.
Okay, Tony? Marie? Kate?
Sure.
Okay, good. So then, can I get someone to make a motion to accept the application as presented with those 5 recommendations and support for the variances?
Sure.
Tony, seconder?
So approved.
Marie? Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gus and Fred.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for a nice meeting. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, here's Dariush. Scott. And nobody's presented good in the landscape. Okay, next application 5B is application DP application number 1237 at 2345 Kenworth Road, again to be introduced by Lisa Bergman.
This is a development permit application for a personal care facility with 40 residential units to be located at 2345 Kenworth Road. The property is zoned Community Corridor 3 and falls within Development Permit Area 9. The general development permit area design guidelines apply to the proposed development. A variance is requested for building height from 14 meters to 14.73 meters, and a variance is also proposed for the maximum permitted front yard setback. So this is a bit in reverse in that we have a maximum permitted, which is 6 meters, but they'd like to site the building 7.75 meters from the property line.
Perfect. Thanks, Lisa. Dariush, you ready to share your screen?
Everyone for looking at guys, can you see this?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, perfect. Myself, I'm Scott Pitti presenting this. Victoria, unfortunately, not able to join us for today, and I will try my best to cover. And I'm sure I cannot do the work as good as the Victoria can present, but I try my best. So the first project, as mentioned, is the personal care facility and rental apartment building for BCLD. No, sorry. It is the Corridor Zone 3, 4-story building and parking at the grade. We have 30 residential units, rental residential units, and some mixed tenants in the main bedroom. This mixed use of the studios, 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom. The property recently just subdivided here, and the road went through. Majority of the property in this area is going to be car dealerships. As you see, we don't have much of a residential area. We have a park across the street. It's basically new development in that sort of area. I have a couple of pictures. Also, property recently flattening out and which are like almost 2 structures existed at the time. These are the picture from the area. We also having some challenging items like this electrical pole with tie down those ones, and which I will show some strategy how we work around that. So the site, there is services the right of way services going through the Lapio Road. The green line shows that services, and then right of way actually with the tie down. The building has to be pushed the building as far as we can to closer to the Lapio, which is that's the closest where the area we asking for variance is actually in Kenworth. In terms of the balance in the landscape around the building, it makes the building also little bit important as bylaw requires from the Kenworth to balance the both sides landscape area. Basically, our great parking area is coming from the Lapio. Our main entrance is from the parking side. Because we are entering to the building pedestrian from the side, from Lapio, very close to where the pole is, we're putting basically cover the area all through to make sure people, they don't really feel that much of the, presence of that pole. And they feel more safer. It's basically everything is covered up to the door. As I said, the main floor is 10 units in the main floor, and then we have the 30 units. The upper floor is all similar to rental type of the units for families, and DC housing is the operating building. So floor plans, the upper 2 floor plans is very similar. Here, what we have, because we are not because of the security and safety of the residents main floor, the design basically forced us to have the entrance from the parking side. So what in terms of the form and character, I created this I call it flag. Basically, one wing of the wall is sending out to creating some sort of attention for entrance, and also that canopy area. This is the south elevation, shows where the entering exactly that's coming here. We also look at this place. And the rest of the units. Because of the nature of the units, they requested to not having any deck. So the buildings don't have a deck in the building overall. So here some other facades of the building, but using the corrugated metal, the hardy panels, and hardy shingle, like there are planks, but they look like a shingle, using that in the main floor to make it more warm type of the connection at the floor, at the grade with the building. This is the rendering from corner. In creating some canopy at the corner of the area, and keep a little bit interest, but obviously we are having the all around the building with the fence, 6-foot picket fence, the fence from the Lapio. That's the pedestrian entrance. We talked about the material. This is the palette, the client selected, a little bit off-white panel with the bluish, selected with the ocean, blue ocean or deep blue ocean color. The shingle, which is going to color with the more like rustic copper color. And Lisa already talked about the small parking variance. I think I made a mistake. We are actually at the 40%, the small parking percentage. So we don't need that variance. We are just looking for these two variants. The building height. Overall building height, actually the overall building height everywhere is 45, which is meet all the bylaws requirements. The only area we are higher in the flag area where I raised that wing up. So it's basically just one wall taller than it's supposed to be. And regarding the other one, additional, instead of the maximum 6 meters, you have 7.75 meters. Again, it's balancing the both sides in terms of the landscape treatment. And this is architecturally done. I'm going to continue with the landscape and then civil and let the questions to the end. We do have basically area, garden area, plain garden area in that area, which I'm sure Scott maybe have some information about there. We're putting the fence 3 meters off the property line, adding more landscape here and all around, basically create a nicer street view, also create a more safer area and indoor, outdoor space inside the property line for tenants. As we talked, we have a parking here. That side of the building, we have a dealership. So we created lots of landscape buffer with the solid fencing in these two sides. The staff recommendation actually created some landscape area. We used to have our garbage enclosure far from the entry, but as requested clients, we bring it closer to the entrance, but we are hiding with some landscape there, so we don't want to be too much exposed. We do have some interior also landscape area with sitting space, planting gardens, playground, outdoor dining type of the space right in front of the amenity spaces, and also closed dog runs here. Planting the tables, which I have no idea what they are. But I try again if there are questions to answer. I also had the design rationale. I believe it was part of the package. I don't want to reading those ones and throw you guys. But if there is any question, I do have a print here. I can do that one. I think I'm done architecturally, and we can hand it over to the Scott.
Thank you, Darius. Darius is going to control, and he's just going to put together a nice PowerPoint presentation. So, I think as you've seen before, this is our typical development permit package we put together. It's very thorough from the perspective as in we set everything up for building permits, make the process go as smooth as possible. So that's just our standard notes, and then we get into the key plan, which sort of identifies all of the servicing. I know that from this panel, you guys are concerned about stormwater management. So Darius can just flip through down to our servicing page, and what I can do is so there's our grading page where we've graded out the site, got an access profile into the driveway, which is a requirement for the city building permit, and here's our servicing you went back up.
Oh, sorry. Is there no servicing like this?
There's the servicing there, right? So this site's been, was a little bit tricky to deal with because it's actually tributary to the future car dealerships, which we're actually starting to get involved in right now, and then up onto the properties that are off of Bowen Road where I think the carpet place there off Bowen, there's a retaining wall and all the storm drainage comes down, so you can see the pipe there just go up a little tiny bit there, Darius, right?
Yeah.
A little bit. So that way there's actually taking all the tributary upstream, so that's just going to bypass our site. And then our storm detention system where if you come back, Darius, to that manhole, where you were before?
Here?
Yeah, and now sort of go diagonally up that next to your left and sort of up the page. This is our storm detention pipe, right? So what we've done is we've done our pre and post development calculations, and we have a storage pipe in the ground there with the control structure, and then tying into that new manhole. If you go into the parking lot area, we've been able to utilize the grading of the parking lot. You'll see a little bioswale there, so we're capturing some of the parking lot drainage, and we'll pick it up, and that ties into that storm pipe. Now that covers off the detention component, and just in case anyone's interested, for this site we're going to store about 16 cubic meters of stormwater, and then we'll release that at the pre-development flows and we go back to when the site was actually fully treed, which would be similar to right across the street of how we run those numbers now. So the next stormwater management requirement is the retention component, and if you scroll up and on the Kenworth side, what we've done is we've created and utilizing the buildings a little bit further set back. We're working that area and putting a retention component where we have a perforated pipe there, and we're connecting to the roof. So what's going to happen is all the roof drainage that's going to come off there is going to go into the retention, and we're going to retain that on the site. And if anything overflows, it connects to another storm service that we have down towards the corner of the building. The retention calculations also take into account the landscaping areas. So in the parking lot, we have that little small section of bioswale, and then any of the landscaping areas, we work with Victoria to come up with what sort of volume of retention we can get within the soils, and that's all summarized. If you go down, not the next page is going to probably be our details there.
Too far.
Yeah, and there's all the math behind it, which at the end of the day shows all the different areas and tributaries and spread calculations. And as we always try to do, we follow the city in that respect, and we've met all the requirements for retention and detention for stormwater management. So thank you, and I'll pass it back to Terry, and if anyone has any questions for me, I'm available, and I can try to help Darius with some of the plan questions. And like you said, I'm not very good at it either.
Is that it, Darius? Or you said you had a...
Yes. No, that's it. So we are ready for questions.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Open up to the panel members if they have any questions for staff.
Stop sharing the screen.
And Darius, you can stop sharing the screen now. Thank you. No questions for staff, I see, so I'll open up to the panel. I'll start with Kate this time, please.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I think I'm going to comment about the landscape. I would like to, given the location of the amenity space and that it's quite exposed to the sun, I'm going to recommend that the landscape architect consider trying to create more shade on that parking edge with trees. There may be a valid reason why there aren't trees there, but I can't figure that out right now. So my suggestion is to look at shading that space a little more than it's currently being shaded. And that I agree with some of the staff comments about providing some kind of cover over the entry to that space. Because it looks like there isn't a cover, there's just a tiny cover, but the doors are not covered. Is that correct, Dariush? Into that?
There is a cover, if I may, I would like to share again the side. Actually, the landscape drawing is not correct. It looks like a stop here.
Yes.
This is architectural correct. It goes all through, and it's all covered.
And how about where the entry and exit doors are to the amenity space?
We do have a very small cover there, but I do agree with the staff comments to create more covering there, that maybe we can have a continuous, the overhang there. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think you will also make that space more useful year-round if you have a covered area for the residents. So even if it could be a little more generous so that you can be sheltered in the rain and still be outside, I can imagine that would be useful. Okay, thank you. What was that? Yeah, okay, so I understand that. I don't have any issue with the planting palette or the details. And I think I'm okay. The building setback variance, which is unusual that we're getting one to be set back more, but I believe in the context of this area, it seems reasonable given that the majority of the other uses that are coming into play are car dealerships, and they also have kind of a more setback, the buildings have more setback relationships with streets, and I don't see that as an issue with this particular building and this neighborhood. So I guess, Kevin, my main recommendation is to find ways to shape that amenity space, whether it's adding trees or, especially along that parking edge. Especially for that play area, there's just no shade. It's totally fully exposed, and I just can't see that being very hospitable, especially on a day like today.
Okay, thank you, Kate.
Oh
yeah,
I was just going to hold off on commenting about the building. I guess generally speaking, I think the building it's leaning towards a bit more institutional than residential, and I would love to see it sort of lean a more residential feel, but I'll kind of let the architect comment. I'm not quite sure how that could be managed, but I'm just going to say that and wait and hear what everyone else has to say.
Okay. Thanks, Kate. Next up, Marie, please.
Yeah, thanks, Dariush. I think it's a lovely project and fits in very well in this corner. And sort of following on Kate's comment about the residential field, I think considering the neighbors of this building, I don't know that you want it to look too residential, and I think you've done a really good job of just kind of finding a happy medium between that. And I think we can get the landscape done up with the trees and so on, that the building itself will be a great complement and form a kind of transition between the commercial spaces and the park across the street. So, putting that all together and thinking about that space. And then, again, I think the purpose of the building as well, you have problems with making it too residential looking. So I think it's a good option. And once again, too, I really enjoy your variation of color and simple contemporary form, Dariush. It's always fun to look at your work. And so in terms of form and character, I like the building. I like how it's situated in the L shape, and you get a nice private courtyard for that amenity space. But I would agree with the staff comments about your front entrance facing the parking lot. If there's any way you can move the parking spaces in front of that, I think would really help and make that doorway a little more welcoming. Because when you come off the parking lot, you don't want to see a bunch of parked cars in front of the building. So that would be my one recommendation, I guess, if you can think of a way to move that. And I know you're already asking for a parking variance, so that might pose some problems. So that's all I have to say at this point, so thanks.
Thank you. May I respond?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is actually responsible both regarding the functionality of the building. It is personal care facility, and obviously people, they usually live in like rental, but not for long term. So they're all short-term living. So that was really detailed reviewed by the and operator, and I suggested to not having the deck. That's why it don't have a deck and don't have a ceiling of the fully residential. But the idea was, thank you, Maureen, to make it the transitional between the industrial type of the car dealership and the residential area. And also, it was the security concern regarding the entering to the building. So we started with having the entrance in the corner, but it was no to go from the beginning. So basically, entering and exiting from the building is very secure way. It needs to be monitored, even for parking or for pedestrians. So that was the nature of the building. So I always try to go with what the field is right in the site, but sometimes you can't really fight against the function of the building. So you have to say yes for some of the main concern of the client, which was the security and safety of the tenant.
Yeah, if I could just jump in before you continue, Marie. Yeah, this building is not meant to be used, accessed really by the public, really. It's really more of a private building, correct? Okay. And also, Lisa Bergman has a question. We're jumping on.
Maybe just a comment, and Dariush and I need to have this conversation about the parking rate, because, and we'll clarify that later, but we could apply residential parking rate, but probably it's more appropriate to apply the personal care facility parking rate, which is less. And either way, I think there won't be a small car variance request in the end, because it's the percentages on the required parking, not the total parking. And so I think in this project you have probably more than the parking bylaw requires. And so I think you won't have that parking variance. So just a comment that we'll sort out.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Sorry, Marie, keep going.
Yeah, I think I still think if you find a way not to have cars parked right in front of the door, I understand the security thing, and I understand they're coming in through the side gate, but then some people will come in a car, and then they're confronted with, the doorway being blocked by parking. So I'm not too, I think that would help a little bit if you could at least remove a couple of those spots, maybe have 2 handicap spots either side and 2 away from the front. I don't know, that would be my suggestion. If there's ways you can look that up.
Actually, I think the other additional, again, the number of parking requested by clients, but I feel we do have some experts who can remove, and always I do put the accessible stall right in front door, which usually they are empty, which make it more welcoming to the building. So I will find out today to reduce the number of parking at the front. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Marie. Next up, Tony, please.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. I agree with comments that I've heard so far from Chief Marie. First of all, I think the variances are acceptable. They're pretty minor stuff, and I don't have a problem with them. I really like the outdoor area. I think that's a great amenity. It's good that this project has that, especially with kids are involved. The suggestion for a more covered outdoor area, obviously more usable, more year-round kind of thing. and the addition of shade trees would be helpful. I also like Marie's comments about the perceived conflict of the main entrance and the parking. I'm sure that could be worked out. Sort of a bigger issue. I'm having a little bit of a challenge for myself, understanding the actual design approach that you take to the form and character here. I find it kind of sort of self-contradictory, because on the one hand you've got a very neutral-looking exterior with the bulk of the building, particularly on the two street frontages, which is what I think you want with a facility like this. You don't want to call huge amount of attention to it. Yet you put up that giant red blade wall there with an angle that sort of screams out, look at me kind of thing. And I just wonder if that isn't inherently, sort of contradictory to the nature of this building, which obviously has a requirement for security and also a degree of anonymity, I would think. Part of the anonymity it's just going to get from its context, with a lot of car dealers and stuff like that around it. I don't think it should look residential. I think it should look as neutral as possible, and possibly more commercial, more even looking like not institutional, but more like a commercial building than a residential one. Just so it almost disappears into its context. I think that might be how I would look at this, but maybe I'm wrong. You also have quite a vertical expression to the way you've broken up the exterior materials. I just wondered if that wouldn't be softened by being more horizontal expression, or even totally neutral, which is either horizontal, nor vertical, if you can understand what I'm talking about. So maybe I'm kind of rambling here and not quite clear, but I guess my bottom line is, for the nature of this project, which is very sensitive type of building, not your everyday apartment block, I'm having a little bit of a challenge quite reconciling some of how you've dealt with the exterior elements, materials, and frankly even the strong colors. So perhaps you could comment on that, please.
Yes, I tried my best. It's okay. I want to share again. I go to the rendering again. Yeah, in these two elevations, we try to be as quiet as possible, not really screaming. I understand your comments regarding the distance. It's like a little bit too loud. I don't think so. Clients really in love with that, or that was what I did put it there. I thought we needed it, but regardless, because we have elevator chapter and it's going to be taller than the building, I guess it does that the work I'm looking for. I don't have any problem with deleting that flat type of wall, wing wall. I think the contractor probably would be happy to. Yeah, regarding I try to be horizontal in the lower floor where you're at the grade, and more connecting to the nature in the ground floor, and the upper floor. You're choosing the one day or another regarding the horizontal or vertical. I thought it's the best, because if the building is not actually big building and it's not tall building. So if we are going 5-6 stories, I do suggest to go horizontal line. But here, purposely, I did like to go to the vertical to make it, same that the size as it is. So we have an almost vertical, horizontal, and vertical both in the building. Sometimes you don't have a really always rational to what you do. You're designing and you go with the flow and you get to the one point to another. But overall, I felt that I did a decent job. Not great, but just to meet what the client needs. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's a challenge, and I think you've done a good job. I'm not sure it's just quite needs a little more finessing or something. And I would just add to my comments that I forgot to add earlier, and that is looking at this particular view. I don't find that entrance particularly welcoming or inviting. It looks almost, hostile and kind of got a Darth Vader aspect to it, but maybe could be softened a little bit and be a little more welcoming looking. I'm not sure how you would do that, but that's your job, not mine, if you agree. But
we did have a different design process. I should maybe not bring it up, but I like to bring it up. What we added before, I added 2 taller poles in the both sides and hanging the canopy over there, just creating some sort of the canopy, very floating canopy, not being too bulky, and with the 2 taller poles in the both sides, with that to give that feeling of interest. But obviously the client wasn't happy about that, and this is an option we went with, and they did like to go with this one. I think it's, with having the name, and one of the reasons we flagged is actually for name and putting the number type of thing, and obviously over there too. So it will create more flagging out where the entrance are,
okay. Well, thank you for your response, and I'll see what Charles has to say, or whether I'm out to lunch or.
Okay, Charles, you can unshare your screen again, please? Or Darius. And Charles, you're up next.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. And thanks, Darius, for the presentation. I don't really have much to add, actually. Well, that's not true. I have one main point, and it kind of wraps up some of the stuff that's been discussed. I'll start with a question, just a confirmation, Darius, that there's no variation in the elevation in the wall plane. The walls are vertically aligned all the way up the building. Is that correct? There's no step backs or overhangs other than the canopy and the weird.
Just in the corner, we have a step in the, not the vertically, vertically, not horizontal.
Yeah. So kind of keying in a little bit to what Tony was saying, and also the discussion about canopies and overhangs. I agree on the main entrance canopy. When I first looked at it, it made me think of a bulldog. I don't know why, but it did. Whereas in contrast to that, you have the canopy at the corner, on the corner of Kenworth and Levue, and it's just a very simple straight line overhanging canopy, but it's also overhanging a space that, it's not the main entrance, whatever. But I find that it works well in conjunction with your roof overhang. Tied to that is your north elevation and your your east elevation, your 2 street elevations coming off that canopy. You have 2 or 3, sometimes 4 different materials that are all in plane, that are meeting between the first and the second floor. So my suggestion or my recommendation is going to be that you consider not an overhang, like not a canopy, but actually like a belly band kind of detail that takes that line of that canopy around the building and separates the main and the second floor. So those materials aren't all jumbling together. And then where you need a canopy, you just very simply extend it out and make it a canopy. So that you have this really simple horizontal plane around the building. It's bigger at the main entrance where you need that protection. It's bigger at the amenity space where you need that protection. And it's just a belly band everywhere else on the building to just kind of wrap it around and tie it all together. And then I think you're not doing I like the flag. This is where I'm going to disagree a little bit with Tony, because I think you do need something on this building in particular to signify, help signify where the entrance is, and I get that that's what the flag's doing, but I think that means that your canopy doesn't also have to do it. Your canopy can just be very simple. It's providing weather protection, overhang, a place to put an address number, and that's it. Keep the flag, and then just kind of do the belly band treatment, or whatever you want to call it, around the building. And then, I like the vertical horizontal mix that you have. It's predominantly vertical, and I think if you encapsulate it with those bands at the roof and at the main floor, that'll just tie it all together and strengthen it. Otherwise, I was going to ask you about the program and the no balconies, no decks, no Juliet balconies, but I understand the program and, client considerations. And I think I agree with, I think it was Marie who said that, as a transitional building in this kind of strange mix of uses in the neighborhood, it does kind of work well if it isn't screaming residential. It's kind of an intermediate style. So that would be my main recommendation, would be to carry that thin black line treatment around the building as a canopy, or as a I'll call it a belly band, but you know what I mean, as a detail. Otherwise, I quite like the project.
Thanks, Charles. I would jump in.
Thank you. Sorry, may I have a small response?
Sure.
Yeah, first, actually, I was wrong to have it to have in one side. But I really appreciated your comments. I think it's that belly band which some area can be extended and separated this area. It will be really helpful. I appreciate it. I think it's a very smart move, and I'm going to look at that and provide that. I think it's great, and that can be similar narrow layout here, maybe like in the angle, but in the same thickness. I think it's very smart, and that was what we see here, and not less narrow than this, and very, very nice and clean, I think, line. Thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful.
Thanks, Dariush. I thank you, Dariush and Scott, for your presentation. Scott, it's nice to see real detailed drawings and calculations to show what can be done on a site like this. It's definitely lacking in a lot of other projects, so I really appreciate that. I pretty much agree with almost all the comments made so far. With respect to what Charles and Tony commented on about the wall fin or the wall flag, or whatever you want to call it, I was really conflicted with that too. I think it adds to the character of the building. I think what I sort of struggled with was the color of it sort of matching the main cladding, and I was going off in a different direction and looking at what if we made that wall flag the same color as the roof fascia banding, and kind of was a way to tie down the color of the roof all the way down to the color of the entranceway. But there's obviously three options that are there that we can consider. We can remove it, change the color of it, leave it as it is, but there are three options that we can possibly discuss for that. It is a very institutional building, and I agree with what's been said so far. We could easily do what Tony said and give it a more commercial feel, but there is precedence in the neighborhood. There are two government buildings within close proximity immediately to the east that are reasonably close, so and they are very obviously very institutional appearance. So I'm okay with the main form and character. A staff comment regarding the garbage enclosure materials and screening from the sort of its close proximity to the entry. I know the landscape architect isn't here, but it appears that it might be a way to add more ground cover, bushes and shrubbery around that enclosure on the south or the entryway side of that. I know there's a tree going to be planted there, but Dariush, how do you feel about that?
I think we tried to, but it doesn't mean the 100% successful. Yeah, we can look at that and create more landscape.
Okay. Yeah, because a tree isn't going to screen it too much, right? It might screen it from from a high height or whatever, but that would be sort of one of my recommendations. This is meant to be at night anyways, to be a totally secure site, is that correct? Like the gate for the pedestrian link is going to be locked at night, or is it going to be left open that people can walk in?
No, the gate day and night time is closed. Everybody has to be resident to come in or pass in and get the access in. The 24/7 gate is closed.
Okay. Let's see. I think that pretty much covers everything. So the only thing I would say is if there's a way to screen the garbage enclosure with landscape materials, I think that would probably really help. What type of materials are you using? Split face, a concrete block on the garbage enclosure?
No, the other two separate details, but here I would like to go with the cedar fence type of what we're using in the back for separating back, central play area. We will go with the cedar type of the fence.
Okay.
Side.
Okay.
No conflict.
Okay, that's good. That's pretty much all for me. I think you've done a very good job, Dariush. It's you're going with an institutional look. I think there is some character to it, even though all the wall faces are pretty much flush. But all in all, a very good job. So thank you. I would like, I guess, everyone to come jump back in on some of these recommendations, because especially Kate and Marie, who had to speak first, and also Charles and Tony regarding that wall flag. Okay, anyone want to jump in?
I just had a question. I'm assuming, I appreciate the discussion around what the building looks like and the context of where it is, but I'm also interested in the experience of the user and how they feel and where they may have been before and where they are now, and if that it feels okay for them. So I'm assuming the client is okay with what you've presented. So I think I'll just sort of, so that was my main thinking around wondering about how the building felt. It was more about
the form
the user.
character, you mean?
Yeah,
and the user's experience.
Okay. Okay.
regarding the user experience, what the client was emphasized was the tenants, majority of the time they're gonna say this project should be looking in instead of out. So there is a common space in the main floor, dining type of space, and amenity to main floor connected to the backyard, and there is lots of gardening area, even dog ground. It's all protected, and it's kind of, I don't want to, it's secure, but it's not present. But everybody wants to be in that area with the kids and things. So that's the type of the feeling they want, and we've been in the maybe for more than 10 meetings with the client. This is one of the most meetings I have with the client in any person, and to get, and I believe they are happy with the program, yeah. So.
Okay, anything else, Kate?
No, just that was just my comment. It was more about the user's experience and perception of where they are. Anyway, but the client knows them best.
Okay. Okay, anybody else? Tony?
No, I don't really have anything to add to what I said before. I confess to my own sort of slight confusion over the mixed messages I see this building sending, but as Kate points out, and I have thought of that, you know, if the owner who's in the business, as it were, dealing with this special kind of facility is totally comfortable with it, then I have no right to argue with that. I do find everything being said, I still find that a flag wall or whatever a bit incongruous and a bit too, to me, somewhat unnecessary, but not a deal breaker. So I think that's all I have to say.
Okay. Charles?
Is it sorry, Kevin, may I just hop in?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think with I wasn't, deleting or not deleting the flag is not a big concern for me, but I think with the charge suggestion regarding the reducing the canopy, making very certain and continue to that canopy, and the color change that Kevin mentioned, to that charcoal color for that flag, that will be reduced the mixed message sending out rendering probably.
Marie or Charles?
No, I think I stick with the comments and.
Do you have any comment on that flag or that wing that sticks out?
No, I kind of like it, considering the fact that it's surrounded by car dealerships, which do sort of similar design and bright colors. Again, I think the building serves as a good sort of transition between the different types of buildings that are going on there.
So
I don't think it's really called a lot of attention to itself.
So do you like that it matches the color of the cladding? That orange color cladding, or does that matter?
No, I didn't have any problem with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Charles? You're happy with the way it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm happy with it the way it is. It doesn't mean it can't be different, or I think the suggestion may be that it could be an element that if the lower treatment is changed the way I suggested, and you have the high roof level, it could be an element that then actually ties the two together. And then, even though it's sort of angular and sending a kind of different message, whatever, it does begin to work to tie things together a little bit. So maybe a color change is worth considering. I think losing it, it's hard to say. Like the elevator tower kind of does the same thing. So if it wasn't there, I think Darius just has to look at it, and with the client, of course. And maybe if it's not there and the elevator tower is this strong element that's tying things together and it's simplified, maybe that's better. But I think it just has to be looked at.
Yeah. So I would guess that. So okay, Tony, go ahead.
Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure. Yeah, I mean, we can't be too prescriptive here.
Yeah.
Ours is, constructive criticism and not, do this, do that, which, we all know that. But I think the suggestions that we made are definitely positive ones, and I think that Darius can, use his talents and, perhaps massage and tweak here and that kind of thing. The fundamental project is a great one, and I think it could just spend a little more tweaking, and I'm sure Darius can do a great job of that.
Yeah, so it seems like the consensus is that we just leave it the way it is and let Darius look at, or he's heard our comments regarding it, let him decide how he wants to deal with it. I'm totally fine with that if everybody else is. Okay, so I assume that nobody has any concerns regarding the variances for height and front setback variance, is that correct? That's good. So I'll just run through the recommendations as I heard them anyways. From Kate was consider adding a shady area to the amenity space, especially near the parking and play area. Okay, and add weather protection over the door that accesses the amenity space from the main building. Remove some of the car stalls in front of the entry. Is that, we never really discussed that, but Maureen mentioned that. Does anyone want to comment on that, or? Everyone's good? Good? Tony, you're good? Okay, so we'll consider that one. Tony, regarding the form and character of the commercial look, I'm assuming you don't want to consider that now, is that?
No, as you said, the applicant has heard our comments and suggestions and ideas, and seemed to be nodding in approval as we went along, so I'd be happy just to leave that alone at this point.
Okay, and then Charles has considered adding a band that will extend from the northeast corner roof plane around to the entry. A belly band or a band? Is that right? Do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's starting to sound terribly prescriptive. But,
yeah, well, or carry the color of the roof around from the northeast corner to the entranceway?
I wouldn't say where. I think it's just more important to say that the belly band, or whatever you want to call it, is used to separate the materials between the main and second floor level. And to simplify, using that to simplify the canopy at the entry.
Do we call it a design element instead of belly band? Yeah, I've always hated that phrase, but that's just me.
Yeah, and then again, that's the prescriptive element.
How about just consider a design element to help separate, or, something to that effect, not really prescribe it.
Yeah, so it was to separate the main floor from the second, the main floor materials from the upper floor materials, right?
Yep.
Okay, so add a design element to separate the main floor materials from the upper floor materials. And the last one that I had was look to screen the garbage enclosure with landscape materials. So that's it. Any things that are missing? So the wording of those are all fine? Okay, so can I get someone to accept the motion as presented with those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 considerations. Is that right, Lauren?
I have 4.
Okay, so I'll run through them again. So the first one was consider adding a shady area to the amenity space, especially near the parking and play area. Consider adding weather protection over the door that accesses the amenity space. And then consider removing some of the car stalls in front of the entry. Then consider adding a design element to separate the main floor materials from upper floor materials. And the fifth one, look to add, to screen the garbage enclosure with landscape materials.
Thank you.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so can I get someone to make a motion to accept the application I presented with support for the variances and those 5 recommendations? Kate.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll put Kate and Charles down as a seconder.
Okay, do you want me to say it first?
No, just holding up your hands good.
Good.
And you did, so. So we got that on the table. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll put the question to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Well done, Charles.
Thank you very much for all.
Everybody?
Thank you very much.
So,
Thanks for carrying, Kevin.
you're welcome. So there's no other business, is there? Seeing none? Good. I guess we can make a motion to adjourn. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.